So we're going to do a overview first, and this is my first work, the largest work out of the three that I just showed you, and it's called Identity. And it came from a theme of identity, which I thought about my roots in Korean nationality and also about being uncertain of what my identity is. But I kind of metaphored the bird as like the positive voice in me that is telling me that it's okay even if I don't know what my true identity is. And it's like a process of knowing that and discovering that as I create and I live the world. And also, I did wanted to make that scene of myself in the midst of like a wind. So if you see like where my hair strip is kind of blowing slightly, I wanted to create that wind kind of swishing me, and even if you see the hair on my head, it's kind of blowing. And even though there are winds representing that different voices around me or the things that I encounter that's around the world that might kind of confuses me of who I am, I wanted to like stay still and kind of decide according to the voice that's inside me. And sometimes that direction is different from what I think. It's sometimes opposite. So I wanted to make that direction kind of different from where I'm looking. So the creative process is similar of how I do before. So I usually lay out paper. This is paper here, and this kind of sandy material is probably the medium texture modeling paste. And I also have plaster here. I think the thick ones right here are plaster. And then I paste everywhere just according to my intuition. And then when it's dried, I put on dark layers first. So I think this dark green was the dark layer that was on the bottom. And then I come lighter and lighter. And when I come in the top layers, I kind of go back and forth. Like there was a light green here, but I went over with a pink, kind of mauve pink here. And then I go over with white. And the reason why I love using textures because this texture kind of really reminds me of like an excavating process of trying to find the bone under the like sand or soil. And I feel like I'm really protruding, I'm kind of excavating the surface above here to find this figure. And that's why I think I have the most texture around her face to really enhance this personality of the figure. This bird though, it was painted exactly from paint. It wasn't photographed, but I wanted to give a touch of red to, signify kind of passion and love that is kind of, that might be, suppressed under me, that might be forgotten because of the voices of the lies and the hindrance that the world gives me. The garment is mostly made of scrapbook paper or old books that I use like here, and of course fabric as well. And this time I really tried to paint over this whole first layer because I wanted that really faded look. So I painted a lot here with this colored like really light green paint over and over again, but really lightly with dry brush. And it creates this kind of muted and faded that's almost kind of covered in one layer or top of layer. And she's trying to kind of come out of that, kind of blended into it, but kind of also emphasized because of that background. And I think I usually have the most texture on the garment part because I want to enhance that hanbok as well, as it represents my identity strong as well. And I just picked up my camera to just show you the details. For the face, I use oil pastels a lot. Oil pastels are great because they blend well and they create like an oil effect without using oil paint, and it's so rich in color. I love emphasizing the lips and the cheeks as they really show femininity, and even hair was done with oil pastel. I mean, you see, it's still very rich, and I love the pigment that's always rich like that. As you see here, even after the first layer of this hair, I decided to really put that lighter layer, like almost covering her hair, covering her whole face to create that kind of ephemeral fading effect. And this was one of the headpiece that this photograph was wearing, like a traditional Korean headpiece. And this was like an underpaint, like a brown underpaint. But after I stuck on these scrapbook materials, and I just painted over this. And I loved how this underpaint of brown really played well with the whole image of the headpiece. And I decided to just keep it like that. And I love when those things happen. And last little detail is my favorite medium of these days. It's pressed flowers. And I really wanted to represent that, like, heaven is like creating a tree above my head, and when that heaven is created, like, there's birds coming to nest on you, and there's flowers that blooming, and I just want to represent that with actual pressed flowers. And this is my second piece. This is an abstract piece, and it's about 18 by 24, and it's on wooden panel. So this work was actually kind of like leftover medium last work to kind of put whatever's left in my studio and create something beautiful. So I had an underbase acrylic paint, like all the colors that you see as a paint over here with the greens. It already existed, and I kind of put it off because I had other works to do, especially the figurative works. I wanted to get it done. And after everything was done, I realized I had a lot of resin left. I had dried flowers left, and I decided to just jump on it and see if I could create another abstract piece. And I actually really enjoyed doing this because I think it's like a strength of abstract work. You kind of don't have to think about it, but just dump everything you have and really trust on your guts about your aesthetic choices. And you kind of be surprised what you really bring up with. And it's sometimes very fascinating and interesting. And I love how the whole composition became like a waterfall kind of movement, and I love the texture of dried flowers that I used here that is really enhancing that. So if you see here, resin is very evident here. You'll probably see in a different angle with light. Resin is kind of like pouring plastic over your artworks, and when it dries, it becomes like glass. It looks like glass, but it's a very sticky material, and some spaces, oh, this is not even, it's still not dry. I do enjoy creating resin because it creates that luminous look of my works, and also creates my dried flowers looking like jewelries. You know those like resin flower jewelries on Etsy? I used to be so obsessed with that, and that it creates kind of that look, and it does have a rustic quality of my works overall, but because resin comes in, it looks like kind of a poshed beauty blooming from the rough surface. And from this work, I really realized the strength that I have in my work is to create a really, really textured rough surface that kind of represents like a roughness or traumatic experience that maybe exists in my world or in my mind. But on top of that, I always create beauty. I always create a figure that's beautiful or flowers that seems blooming, and I think that represents hope and light and positivity that is actually growing from like a darkness or some kind of hardship that actually cannot like kill me, but actually makes me revive. And I love this part because this is where actually there's a waterfall that goes down here as a paint, and that all the bunches of the flower kind of get together here, and that they decide to kind of, you know, burst out. And I love how that waterfall kind of creates that downward composition to create kind of a unifying composition, even though there's a lot going on in the texture. And I really wanted to show these pressed flowers. So I had the acrylic paint layer first, and then resin on top. And then on top of that resin, I added these leftover speckles of dried flowers or pressed flowers. And that made this look like they're floating. It's kind of like having a glass layer under these petals, and it feels like they're floating on water. And then on top of that, I put another resin layer, and it created this beautiful kind of 3D deep layer feeling. It was a lot of layers of resin, but I loved how it turned out, and I would have not have tried this if this was like one of my main works, but because it was like, okay, let's just dump everything out. It was a trial work, but I love how this accident turned out, and I love the depth. And I just think how these dried roses that I actually dried myself are clothed with both resin and paint together, and it creates that a new dimension. Like, it doesn't look like dried flowers, it looks like creatures or some kind of interesting manner that is bursting out of the crack. And I had, you know, that the idea that the dandelions actually grow from cracks, and I had that idea in mind, how this rough surface here might destroy, you know, life and give us hardships, but in between that, that's where a true life or new life is going to burst, and it will be beautiful than ever before. Oh, and one more thing, I painted my panels off the side white this time, and I really love it. It makes it very sleek. I did paint over the original colors over the panels or the side panels before, but I tried painting everything in white, like creating a frame or having that, you know, kind of that shadow box looking gap white. It made everything more like, I don't know, holy or clean and very sacred. So I think I'm gonna try that next time too. I really like the white reflecting and making the whole palette brighter. So this is the last work of the day and the smallest piece. It's about 8 by 10 and it's on a canvas panel. You could get it at Walmart or anywhere. And it's one of my favorite panels that I use for my practice of my mixed media. And this was actually created for a workshop that I did for the class that I took last quarter as a teaching assistant. I had to give a workshop of creating and informing other students of my creative process. And the day before that, I was like, I want to put something together that's more recent and share my experience and my techniques to the class. And I used my photograph of my self-portrait. So my face and the body, well, the torso is a photograph of myself that I did last year as my self-portrait series. And I really wanted to create that forest, but kind of an underwater theme, like together. Something that two landscapes are kind of coming together. And to be honest, I didn't know where this was going, but I really enjoyed how this turned out. So the technique works same, it's just smaller space. All the textures that you see here is paper, scrapbook paper. I have some paper that has text on it. And after I have that layer, I just create painted layer and then go on the face with oil pastels or color pencils to really enhance the facial expressions. But here on the hair, I love using modeling paste because it creates that actual hair texture and kind of draws attention to the hair or the face the most, even if I have a lot of texture on my face. So the photo existed until like right here. It ended here, but I wanted to extend my torso until the bottom of the panel, and I created a new garment with this mulberry paper. And mulberry paper is very close to rice paper, but it's a little bit stronger. And I love how rice paper or mulberry paper really absorbs water-based mediums and create that very washed away watercolor look. But I decided to remain this part of the photograph and also this huge green plant. Also, I wanted to leave it because I thought it was a very interesting element and to create that, photo and paint blended look. And I honestly love how photographs and paint combines, because this part is actually photograph, like it's actually part of the photograph of the face, but I left it and I kind of extended that light source with oil pastels to create, that kind of a light bulb into my face. And this is a part of a scrapbook material that had a light pink on it. And I love how it's kind of showing that pink, and it's a very subtle pink, and it creates another color palette, creating that vintage beige palette on the whole work. And also what I love to do is to use color pencils to really enhance that lines and the shadows that are here. So it used to be a little bit more dull, but I went through the lines to create that contour and shades and enhance also this light that I originally had in my photograph and created that extension of light source to create contrast.